You're listening to Francis Oblivion and the Mad Undead by J. Johnson Higgins. This audiobook edition is a Kiss the Widow production.
Chapter 22. A testimonial on the practical applications of fire oil.
From the Book of Shadows of High Priestess Goodearth, aka Rebecca T. Diaza, October 20th. I want to report that I used the fire oil I'd mentioned, and I saw unusual things once I did. It was like nothing I'd seen before. I did it immediately after I'd cast the protection ring around the facility and found the centermost point of the building. It was before I'd projected to Adrian, though. I was alone in meditation, but then suddenly I wasn't. I'd finally reached a calm rhythm with my breathing. The facility was protected, but even then, I'd created an additional circle of protection, as well as a circle of power to connect with the element of fire. From there, it was like a lucid dream to me. I could smell the ginger in the oil, and soon the smell became like hot burning coal. An odd sweetness blended with it, and the temperature around me began to climb. In a state of deep meditation within a protected circle, I have spoken to different types of spirits, beings, and forces in my many experiences. Sometimes it is because I call them, but sometimes they just appear and speak to me. On this day, I called upon and contacted a fire elemental, or more specifically a fire dragon. This labeling can get confusing sometimes, so let me explain that statement. An elemental and a dragon can be one and the same in certain circumstances. That is, dragons can be elementals, those that are based on one of the 5 core elements in nature, but not all dragons are based on the elements. Dragons are a peculiar and finicky type of being. They are some of the most powerful energies in the universe. They are living incarnations of great forces, but they can also transcend elements and represent other concepts like fear, the truth, and hopes sometimes. They help us succeed, or they can help us fail depending on the situation, and even our past relationships with them. They all have unique personalities, like you or me. The strange thing about dragons is that they don't often make contact or make themselves known to humans, even the magic adepts. They almost never take on a physical form, even in meditation. When they do take a physical form, profound forces are active around us, and something big is about to happen. For that reason, it is a big deal for me that I've communicated with one intermittently for years, and that on this day, of all days, she appeared for the first time for me in physical form. I'm the only one from my coven who has ever communicated with a dragon. I'm proud of that unique accomplishment because I understand it is rare in general. Even so, up to this point, I had never seen one. Since I was 12 years old, I've occasionally spoken with a dragon of fire who simply goes by the name Cassidy. This day at the facility was profound for me because Cassidy, for the first time in my life, appeared to me in a human form that I could see as well as reach out and touch. She looked like a young woman in the most basic ways, but the main differences were that she had pink hair and some kind of red gem on her forehead, like a third eye. Her energy level was so high that I could feel her coming into my vicinity, and she made the room comfortably warm to me, a major contrast to the chill I'd experienced before creating the circle. Beyond those oddities, she behaved like I'd always remembered her. Our meeting was much more casual than you might expect from the amount of pre-production and formality that went into calling to her, the ceremony, the candles, the makeup, etc. She stepped out of the shadows and probably would have scared the hell out of me if she hadn't projected such a friendly and familiar aura early on and lit her way as she approached. She looked around the dark control room before sitting down on the mesh floor before me as if she didn't want to get her pants dirty. She asked,
"Wow, what have you gotten yourself into now? Are we even supposed to be here? Should I whisper?"
I supposed it was the oddest location I'd ever called to her. This was nothing like my bedroom, my living room, or even the woods. I told her it wasn't necessary to whisper as no one was around us, but I think she knew that already and was just being funny. The elemental asked me why I'd reached out to her, and I swear it was like sitting with an old friend who I'd asked to meet with something big on my mind. The bonfire, in a manner of speaking, was her. "These are for you," I said, before getting into any details. I gave her a bar of dark chocolate, which I happen to know that she adores, as well as a small bottle of spiced bourbon.
Very nice, thank you.
She replied, as she unwrapped the chocolate. She snapped off a piece for herself and offered some back to me. I accepted. I told her my story. I emphasized my present situation, about the explosives, the storm, and Francis on his way. I told her what he had done to our world so far, what he was planning to do, and I told her about Adrian. She mostly listened while I talked at first, but after hearing my story, we became more conversational. She indicated that she understood. She even granted me permission to use fire almost immediately afterward. I was surprised and honored by this, but she had more to say.
Don't worry, you have permission.
She stopped me from going on.
You seem to have handled things responsibly so far, so you don't need to convince me or anyone of that. I'm not concerned about that part.
I could see her thinking. But something does concern you?
Yes.
What is it?
Please don't be offended.
The elemental prefaced.
In order to project fire like you're asking, you'll have to be excited to do it, and I just don't see that in you right now. It's not about being calm. This isn't like water or earth.
She informed.
Your approach is too removed. If you're passive, it won't help you, and I can't help you as much as I really want to.
I responded. I'm not sure I understand. I'm not calm. I am excited. I've never done anything like this before, and if it doesn't work, this could turn out bad. People are depending on me. Everyone is depending on me, and I don't want to fuck this up. To these words, Cassidy replied.
I understand that, but you just sound like you're afraid.
She shook her head.
That's not the kind of excitement that I mean. Fear wastes your energy. It makes you want to hide. Fear is around when the fire goes out or it puts it out. It's cold, do you see? Fire is the other way around. It changes things, undoes things, recreates it. It's hot and it doesn't sit still. It moves, casts light, it looks for trouble, picks fights, and wins them. It pursues, it destroys and transforms. It resets the board even when we're not ready for it. You don't have to be ready. You need to feel that way about what you're doing. You should want the feeling to spread everywhere, including the things you love, and the art is controlling or limiting where it goes so that when it gets to the things you love, it doesn't destroy them in the process. Unlike with other elements where you must be restrained and let the element emerge, with fire, you must let the element take hold first and then actively restrain it. It's a different state of mind, but a necessary one. What excites you now? What motivates you? You'll need to know and insert it into your actions for fire to work for you.
I'd asked her if the fire could be used for more than just the diversion we'd planned, and if it could be used to beat Francis. Cassidy's response stuck with me.
You can't just defeat him with fire. I'm sure someone would have done that a long time ago if that were all it took. It's been tried. It doesn't mean it can't help, though. The way I see it, you have two main things working for you. First, you have magical knowledge, and he's never faced someone like that before. Second, you have knowledge of Francis himself. Francis is not used to facing individuals who know very much about him. This knowledge is more powerful than any spell you can cast. You need to use that. Take a risk and bring the fight to him knowing all of that. You can't just hide here, you need to surprise him. That is where fire and your goals intersect. Francis will never see you coming if you suddenly become the hunter.
But fire is my weakest element. I'm not good with fire.
Well, you're talking to me, aren't you? You're my friend. I think you're better with it than you think you are, or we wouldn't be here. Think about that. I don't answer calls from just anybody.
The fire elemental made several interesting suggestions, which I pondered on and eventually took steps to follow. Cassidy's talk of a surprise was somewhat consistent with my current line of thinking, but at the time, I still did not have the finalized version of the solution together, at least not how I would execute it, specifically. Admittedly, becoming the hunter scared me. It was not what I'd been for the past year, and it was not my specialty. She'd also suggested I solicit the help of Adrian in developing a fire incantation rather than trying to write one on my own like I usually would.
If you feel that strongly, maybe you should ask the Celestial to help you,
Cassidy said.
Isn't that what he's here to do? He writes. And don't you two like one another? That's something to be excited about, right? That's what fire is all about.
Cassidy had another suggestion.
I've always preferred swords to channel my energy, despite being a sister to fire. Swords represent wind, which can complement and grow fire. I've never had trouble starting a fire. My problem is controlling the fire once it's there. For me, it can sometimes be a problem and get a little out of hand, so it's a good thing to have an outside element like wind to help me when I need to push or need to pull it back after the fact. You seem to like swords too.
Cassidy pointed to my athames.
But in your case, you want the ability to get the fire started, not necessarily to grow it or shrink it. I believe you would be fine with control once it's there, so maybe swords are not the best tools for what you're planning to do.
What do you suggest?
You might want to consider using a fire-based tool like a wand to get it started instead of your daggers. Here.
Cassidy removed a small wand from her bag. It was a simple wooden one that still had the imperfections of a tree branch. There was writing along the side in what appeared to be dragon script in black lettering. Beyond that, the wand was rather unremarkable. I accepted it, but before Cassidy released it to me, she said,
I'm going to need this back though, so don't hoard it and don't wait until the world's about to end to reach out to me again. I want to know how this goes, and I miss talking to you.
I understand. Shortly afterward, the elemental bid farewell to me and went back into the fire. But I continued to think on her advice. The elemental was asking me to pursue some chaotic and uncertain future and claimed that by doing so that future becomes certain, a leap of faith of some kind, a surprise based on what I already knew. She said that I already had the tools to defeat Francis, but I just wasn't throwing my confidence behind them like I should. I needed to change this. We needed to be the ones on the attack. I'd like to stress that we are not fools by now deciding to pursue Francis in some organized way. It was obvious to both of us that in any logical scenario in which we attack Francis, it should be in the daylight where he is weakest. And we are awake and at our strongest, but this has never truly been an option, not for us or anyone before us. In the daylight, there were only ever minor traces of this specter's existence, and the being quite literally was a ghost that could not be found, except in the moments when we are too vulnerable to defend. Further, at this point in time, Francis has transformed our advantage hours into an extension of his working hours. The day was now gone, stolen from us, and probably not coming back. Therefore, even though it was day, it did not look like it, and we'd slept very little in the past 48 hours, so it didn't feel like it either. These are the things that no one ever discusses when facing creatures like this. They're very clever, and they've feasted on us for centuries. They know what they're doing. And then there's Adrian. There are a million things I don't tell Adrian about myself on a regular basis, and my work with magic is one of them. I wonder sometimes what he would think of me if I did tell him everything that was on my mind. I don't mean that I have several dark secrets, but that his perception of me is good so far or acceptable, and that I wouldn't want to tarnish it by coming off as a deranged woman to him. I don't fully know where Adrian stands with my magic use. Does he like it? Does he dislike it? Does it scare him? Does he care? Is he religious, spiritual, agnostic, atheist? I simply don't know, but judging from his reflective silence, curiosity, and occasional participation, I get the feeling that he's somewhere in the center of it all, a conviction that does not have a name. Whatever it is, I would be again putting his beliefs on trial by simply asking him to write me a meaningful incantation of fire in our present situation as the dragon, Cassidy, had suggested. By becoming a hunter of Francis, I was saying that I was willing to put my life on the line in a big and uncertain way. After I'd found Adrian and brought him to the doorway to the roof of the boiler, I talked to him about the experience with the fire elemental. His reaction was accepting, and he said that he believed me. Then I went a step further and asked him to write me the incantation I would soon need. I told him that the incantation should have a fire theme and should be inspirational. I said that it should not be negative. I told him that once Francis reached the facility that we would become the hunters and that I had a new plan. Would you believe that Adrian wrote the most unbelievable and unexpected thing for me just then?
Journal of Adrian Eckenrode, October 20th. Becca had developed an amazing scheme against Francis. She was like a director when she described it for me, almost acting out these things as she did. This behavior never got old to me, and I'd love to watch her do this all day long if I could. But before I expound upon this scheme, I want to tell you that Becca had a special request that was to precede it. She'd asked me to write her an incantation of fire in advance of our assault, particularly for the diversion, and she wanted me to produce it quickly. This indeed put me under pressure, but she had a way of relieving or easing it.
Think of it like a poem.
She began. Those words were helpful in framing my approach. I was at least used to working in that medium. It helped me work through it and remain productive, at least structurally.
But it doesn't necessarily have to rhyme if you don't want it to. But it should have the theme of fire. It should be personal and meaningful to you, your interpretation of the essence of fire. It should anticipate our success.
She put her hand to my arm.
I don't want you to spend all day on it because we don't have that kind of time. Just do what you can, let it come to you, then give it to me to revise.
From Becca's broad parameters, I was instantly inspired. Invocation of Fire by A.E. O'Connor, edited by Rebecca Azza. With fire I knew, only one thing was true, I'd be warmed from within and throughout, while nightly excursions are cold diversions, it will cast off my fears and my doubts, like the light of the day, that was once pushed away, and called back with a piece of the sun. I call forth the power, in this darkly hour, and command that our will here be done. With a turn of the hand, and a stop on demand, the hourglass waits on her word, that the wraith is bound, tied back to the ground, while on cycle she moves like a bird. I was drawn to this dance, a bewitching romance, with her blessings and Angelica, for she is the fire, my warmth and desire, my fate and my love. Rebecca.
Journal of Dr. Rebecca T.D. Stars Azza, October 20th. I could hardly contain myself when I read that last line. I read it a couple of times. My heart just stopped, and I didn't know how to react. I read it a third time just to be sure I wasn't imagining things, and then I came to a winning solution on how to react. I decided to say, you know, not every girl you meet falls for this kind of stuff, right? I waited a moment just to catch him off guard. But I fell for it, though. Adrian had surprised me for sure. He'd written what I'd asked for and simultaneously given me a love poem. This is beautiful, Adrian, I said to him.
But does it work?
Adrian asked in all seriousness.
I can work on it.
It's a little on the sappy side as far as incantations go, but I'm willing to work with it, I teased. Yes, it works. You'll have to be the one to read it for it to work, though. I understand the references, but it's clearly written from your perspective. These kinds of chants work best if you can say them like you mean them.
Journal of Adrian Eckenrode, October 20th. The monsters were on their way. We went to the top of the facility and looked out over the rainy and stormy landscape, taking refuge in the doorway. We waited patiently but could see beyond the yellow guardrail to the organized junk heap of a landscape. These moments passed slowly, but eventually I saw them. There! I pointed. In the darkness we could see them. Their presence was one big show. We recognized that a small set of them operated like they did in all the other encounters or recordings of the mad undead so far. In the Vane's War, they were the soldiers planting the no-nation flag in the ground, the symbolic fanfare preceding annihilation. This time we saw the same small group marching in front. The larger army of shadows stood behind them for a moment, and then they started to advance. Where's Francis? We looked all around and did not see Francis. Wait, there he is, I said. I saw Francis up ahead of them on top of a scrap metal heap. He was perhaps surveying the area, looking for us from a different view. He signaled for the others to advance before he glided back down to the ground and landed before them. The unit was getting closer and closer.
We have to act now,
Becca said.
Read the incantation.
I lifted the page and began. As I finished it, I looked back to Becca. Did it work?
I don't know, keep reading it. These usually require repetition.
Becca replied. I read the incantation again. By the third reading I realized that it must have worked. Becca's eyes were extra brilliant just then. Still brown but pronounced like I'd never seen them before, and unnaturally so. I think it worked. Give it a try. Becca walked out onto the rainy ledge and held onto the yellow guardrail. I came out to meet her there and took her hand. She examined the landscape more intensely than before as the shadow army approached. Then she looked to her right. She raised a special wand in hand and closed her eyes for a moment as if visualizing the explosives burning in her mind. Wait! I grabbed her arm.
What is it?
There's one more thing, I said as I took her into my arms, held tightly to her. I began to glow, sprouted my wings, and leaped over that railing with her. We glided down to the ground, and I gently set her down. I knelt down and untied her shoes. The dirt of the earth to magnify your spell. We could use all the help we can get here.
I see.
Becca quickly nodded.
Good call.
I can bring us back up after we're finished. I slipped off her right shoe and she on her own kicked off the other. She placed her bare feet into the dirt, now mud, and I regarded her grounding tree ring with the rains washing down over it. I shielded her from the rain this whole time with my wing and held onto her shoes, keeping them as dry as I could. Becca raised her wand again and closed her eyes. She waved the wand in a spiral motion. The power immediately swirled around us. I felt it. Within seconds, I saw an explosion in the distance. She'd successfully detonated one of the explosives I'd set up. It worked. In response, the whole Shadow Army stopped and looked to their left toward the explosion. Before Francis could take any further action, Becca caused 2 more explosions, one to the right of them and the other far off across the bridge. Francis and his followers were confused by these events, but like a militaristic leader, the demon maintained his course but with modifications. He deployed small groups to investigate the explosions, each headed by what appeared to be the 4 mid-level commanders, and he kept most of the shadows to accompany him on his original expedition. He's still coming. How does he know we're here?
I don't think he's certain.
Becca waited for the right moment as Francis and his shadows advanced, and she raised her wand again. An explosion went off right where Francis and his group approached. Some were blown to the ground by the impact while others caught fire and dashed for cover. Somehow, Francis dodged it. The mad undead were now scattered about the immediate landscape, which would buy us time and prevent us from having to face all 55 at once. In some respects, this meant the plan was working. Under the cover of the smoke, I grabbed Becca and flew her back up to the roof for safety and a better view. Once on the roof, we saw an already frustrated Francis reacting to the explosions. He began to run toward the facility like a Black Ops commando, expecting heavy fire and other surprises. In a serpentine series of motions, he timed irregular moves where he periodically hid behind strategic objects: trucks, trees, trailers, and conveyor belts. In the long run, he was approaching at an accelerating rate. Once he'd made it to a concrete barrier just outside the facility, he made a fast sprint toward the gate, and his recovering shadows followed behind him. Francis hit another big surprise there. He struck what looked like an invisible barrier that pulsed and sent him flying backward about 30 feet. The other shadows skidded to a sudden stop as soon as they witnessed his misfortune. Francis got right back up and approached slowly. He made his way back to the perimeter of the circle of protection and stood there a moment. Then, he reached forward, touching the barrier but slowly passing through it as if in agonizing discomfort, until finally he was on the other side. He did not invite his followers and instead gave a signal to be ready to advance when called. We looked over the edge to witness the following. Francis dashed up to the door, but when he reached for it, his hand could not grip the handle.
Let's go back inside.
Becca suggested.
He'll have trouble getting inside, but eventually he will. We should get into position in the meantime.
Once we were back inside, Becca reviewed the plan with me one more time because we were about to split up to carry it out. It was right about then that the lights in the facility suddenly came on. The power coming on was rather shocking actually, and made both of us flinch. It was much louder than you might imagine from a light switch or even a searchlight. First, it sounded like a loud bang. Then, suddenly, the ventilation came on. The ventilation had the oddest sounds. It too would bang loudly like there was someone in the vents with a mallet. Then, the sound of the air current resembled that of a commercial jet approaching the building and ready to smash into it. Finally, there came the mystery of ongoing background noise. There was now so much mechanical noise that we could not be sure of what was around us anymore. With a look into Becca's eyes, it was clear that this was the sign that Francis not only arrived but also finally made it into the facility and passed through the protection symbols on the doors.
Keep your journal and your pen on you, no matter what.
She told me.
You know what to do. I'll see you soon. We need to move now.
This story is 100% original and written by a human, yours truly, the author. AI was not used to write, prompt, organize, or otherwise generate this story. This audiobook edition was, however, created using licensed text-to-voice software with a lifelike casting and intonation manually adjusted and refined line by line by me, and art in and of itself. The theme music was written and produced by Kiss the Widow. If you like what you've found so far, please like and follow, subscribe, and share. Also, please be sure to check out my socials.